Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Greer. This is Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm the founder and director of CSETI.org and DisclosureProject.org. And the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence is an organization really formed about 22 years ago now to establish peaceful contact with extraterrestrial civilizations that we have proven are visiting Earth. And we have a program called the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or CE5 initiative, which is designed to train people to become ambassadors to the cosmos and to make contact with these civilizations within the framework of universal peace. And we're going to be focusing on a global network that has been established in the last few years, and I have with me today Kosta, who's a CSETI member who's been working to coordinate this worldwide. And Kosta, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a very exciting concept because, you know, we've been doing this, building the sort of morphogenic field, to use a term from Rupert Sheldrake, in consciousness for open and peaceful contact for 22 years. And the foundation of our work is really the understanding of consciousness and the non-local aspect of mind and awareness, the cosmic component of mind, which is within all of us. And this is because, as many people who have heard this program before, but if you're tuning in for the first time, what we've discovered in our research on this is that all civilizations that are extraterrestrial, that have made it from one star system to our star system, have to be transdimensional. They are moving faster than the speed of light. And when you go through the crossing point of light, you go into a multidimensional or transdimensional understanding of the cosmos that's way beyond Newtonian or even quantum physics. And it deals with the fact that the conscious universe is, in fact, a multiverse consisting of not only unbounded pure consciousness from the point of view of the Vedas, but also the understanding that within even relativity, there are degrees of relativity that get increasingly non-local and expansive and go beyond the constraints of linear space and time as you cross into higher speeds and frequencies and resonant fields. For example, your physical body at one level certainly has a material component, but your astral body, the body of light, the body that you have lucid flying dreams with, that body of light is actually transdimensional. And then you have within that the sort of the pure tonality and essence of the song of your soul, your individuality, the spark of individuality. And then you have the pure mind within that illumines all of it. And that pure mind is a singularity. And as Rupert Sheldrake, who was the father of modern quantum mechanics, put it, the total number of minds in the universe is one. That is, it is a singularity. So even though we may be aware of our own awareness, what we have to understand is that when we go into deep meditation, and we teach these protocols for going into very deep meditation and using mantra techniques and breathing techniques, you can experience mind in its expanded aspect so that you can see another place in the universe or another place in time, point in time, I should say. And that's because the nature of the conscious mind is that it's omnipresent, it is eternal, and it is infinite. And for that reason, when we use these protocols with the intent of contacting these extraterrestrial civilizations, and we call it the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative, or CE5 initiative, where the central technique that we use has to do with experiencing deep silent mind, remote viewing, and then seeing or sensing where these civilizations are or where an extraterrestrial spacecraft or the beings might be, and then inviting them in the spirit of universal peace to our location. So, for example, if we pick up that there's a large extraterrestrial vehicle out by the rings of Saturn, which we have done actually in the past. We will connect with those beings, show them Earth, show them where we are. Say if we're in North America, we'll show them where we're located. Recently, we were just down in Arizona, so we might show them the desert Southwest. And then we literally, through coherent thought sequencing, where we it's sort of like a laser light, but it's with thought, we coherently just stream this image from where they are, letting them use our mind to see exactly where we're located on Earth. And the reason every time we do this, we have some kind of contact phenomenon that happens is because extraterrestrial civilizations that are interstellar are also transdimensional, and all of their electronic systems, all of their communication systems connect with coherent thought. And this is what people, the missing link in the whole study of UFOs has been, and that's the lack of understanding of the nature of transdimensional conscious reality. And once you begin to ask the question, well, if our civilization is here, and we have had people who have been enlightened masters for years who could levitate, teleport, bilocate, remote view, see the future, sense the past, et cetera, and so on. These are all siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-S, or abilities or powers that are described in the Vedas, which I'm sure everyone listening to the World Puja Network is aware of. But the point I'm making is that these civilizations understand this very well from an operational and technological point of view, because in order to go from one point in space that's very far away and go beyond the speed of light, you are literally dropping out of linear space-time and entering into these other dimensions that are increasingly conscious or conscious energy light forms, or what I call the near astral, at least. And so they're moving through those dimensions and then re-emerging into space-time, say, on Earth or in our solar system. So they're not going from point A to B at the speed of light because it's too slow. They're using technologies which we understand quite well that are very high voltage electromagnetic systems, but their communication systems similarly are at that level of refinement, so that someone sitting, or a group of people, more importantly, intending to make peaceful contact, experiencing this unified field of awareness together, can go into deep consciousness and then can see these extraterrestrial civilizations, or maybe even their home planets, and connect to the beings, the actual individual beings, and invite them in an humble and heartfelt way, but also for the purpose of universal peace, not just curiosity. And they're very eager to make contact with humans who understand this paradigm of a quantum conscious holographic universe that's awake. And that is really what they're looking for, is to interact with human beings who understand this. Now, luckily, this is it's sort of where the ancient science of consciousness meets up with post-quantum, very advanced concepts in physics, and that's what we're actually utilizing out under the stars together. And so we have been inviting people to learn this for almost a quarter of a century now, and we do trainings all over the world. We were recently just in Arizona, and I'll talk about that some, but for example, we're going to be on the Gulf Coast of Florida in April, in a beautiful place where we had unbelievable contact last year. We're going to be there April 14th to the 21st. And if you're interested in joining us there, you can find out at cseti.org, cseti.org. And what we do is that we utilize these protocols. We train people in the meditation techniques, but then we go out under the stars at night. So the afternoons are filled with this sort of training and discussion in the afternoon. But in night, we always go out under the stars, and we make a circle, and we do a puja, since we're on the World Puja Network. I can talk about this. And we do a very sacred puja and a meditation, and we begin this process of remote viewing, contacting the ETs, and inviting them to, say, Marco Island, wherever we are. Now, we also use high-powered lasers that we send up to give them a specific linear vector in case our minds aren't all that crisp. Sometimes we're clearer than others. And then we also have some signals, some beeping tones that were recorded in the crop circles and Colin Andrews, who invented the term crop circle, gave them to us. And we used those along with some C-SETI tones that were recorded at other events where we have had electronic tones come in from space around us that we picked up on our digital or regular audio recording devices, and we play those and send those over radio signals. So we have three modalities we're using: coherent thought from this basis of expanded consciousness, laser light going up from our sight, which is linear, and then also these electromagnetic tones that are sort of a signature C-SETI tones. Now, this whole description is actually on an iPhone app. If those of you who have iPhones or iPads at the App Store, it's the Contact app, and so anyone who wants that can get that and download it to their phone or to their iPad, and it's really effective. I mean, it actually will turn your iPhone into a magnetometer, so it'll pick up on these electromagnetic fields that are shifting and changing all around us. But the main thing to understand is that it's really easy to do. If you're conscious and you're awake, you can learn to do this. And we have been training thousands of people all over the world to do this. And now we have, I think, a critical mass of excellent people doing this globally, I mean, on every continent. And it's really very exciting because that creates in the morphogenic field the potential for humans to awaken to the fact that not only are we not alone in the universe, but that we can create a future of universal peace and contact that's open and bring out all this knowledge and also the sciences and technologies that are behind how the so-called UFOs or extraterrestrial vehicles are moving, so we can get off of oil and gas and coal. And one of the things that people have to understand is that there's a lot of secrecy and confusion on this issue, and all of that kind of Tower of Babel phenomenon is because there are very powerful interests who do not want people to know this subject, because acknowledging it means that you have to acknowledge that they've gotten here. And if you acknowledge that they've gotten here, you cannot make any rational explanation for why we're still using oil or coal or gas or nuclear power, because all of those systems are they're anywhere from 70 to 150 years old, and they're obsolete. And everyone in the intelligence community who has studied this knows this is true. But what we're trying to do is be the vanguard, a sort of pioneering vanguard of folks, because when enough people do this, it creates this morphogenic field effect, or sort of hundredth monkey effect, where it actually changes the whole dynamic and energy of the Earth and the potential for this good future. So the CE5 initiative is not about just a few people doing this. It's about having thousands, and I would like to eventually see millions of people understanding and practicing and doing this, because that's how change really does happen. So that's just sort of my introductory remarks. And what we really want to do during the show today, I'm really excited about it because Kosta's been organizing and coordinating with teams of people who are doing this all over the world. And some of these teams are 2 or 3 people, and some of them are 15 or 20 people. And Kosta, why don't you explain kind of the idea behind it and how people are coming together on a regular basis to do that?
Yes, Steve. As you've so ably explained, you've spent a quarter of a century educating people all over the world through all the various media means that you have about how to do these protocols. And so it was a very natural thing back in October of 2010 for me to start contacting many of these groups who had learned of your work and were maybe just doing this individually, just kind of one off or two off on their own.
Right.
So I contacted them and built up a small network where on a monthly basis since October 2010 and over a 24-hour period, usually a Saturday that has been near the new moon so that we could have a reasonably dark sky for sky watching.
Right.
We would have all these teams coordinate throughout all the time zones during that 24-hour period at a time convenient to them and have them link up through their hearts and their thoughts with all their other members, many of them people they've never met or don't even know, but that they knew were part of the network. And that way we would create this coordinated monthly effort of human ET contact using these protocols. and try to build up a momentum and keep it sustaining month after month after month. The numbers of groups varies each month, but, typically we'll have anywhere from 50-ish to 70 or 75 teams that are spread out over half of the United States and maybe half a dozen countries as well, who are linking up during that 24-hour period. And in order to kind of build kind of a group coherency, because this really is about the group and getting everyone coordinated and working together as representatives of the one humanity.
Right.
I often send out updates to all the members telling them where the others are located, roughly how many might be in the teams in different places, so they get a sense that, they're not alone. They know what other locations are there. They can maybe visualize them over the earth and link up with them a lot easier that way. As well, to kind of build a great group coherency, after our 24-hour period has passed, I invite any member of our group who's participated to write me and tell me a little bit about their group experience. And I collate these different reports from our field teams that way, put them together and just publish them and zap them out to the whole group membership so that we can all kind of see the fruits of our labors. We can read of other people's experiences, and that way we can, be inspired by the variety of experiences, by the numbers of them, by all the information that seems to come through.
Right. That's great. Well, it's a great service you're providing to do that, really.
And that's the gist of it.
Well, good. Well, why don't you share some of the things that have been happening with the group since we were last talking about this? I know people have had all kinds of things that have happened, sightings, beings, electromagnetic events, and all kinds of things.
That's right.
It'd be great if you could kind of share with the listeners some of those.
Okay, I can start with a couple great stories. One thing that I forgot to mention the last time we talked was a large event from a large group that joined us actually last August. They're
right.
a yoga group that is based in Romania and has been around for at least a couple decades or more,
right.
which has, I think, tens of thousands of international members.
Correct.
And it just so happened that one of the evenings where we were doing our own global CE5 coordinated contact, this particular group was having a retreat in Romania where thousands of their members would come for a month and do their spiritual practice. And that particular night, they were doing actually an ET-related ritual of their own that they decided to coincide with ours. So we had a very dramatic inclusion of, I believe, 7,000 or 8,000 people from this particular group in that spot in Romania doing even a physical coordinated movement.
Yeah, actually, to be clear, you may not know this, that group has actually been studied, the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which kind of is the story of how all this unfolded in my own life, which you can get at disclosureproject.org, is now in 8 languages, including Romanian. So they've all studied this, and even though I haven't been able to travel yet to Romania, I've been invited, but they have been actually practicing these concepts and talking about them. And one of the members of our CSETI team that was actually just with us in Arizona is Romanian, and she has been our liaison to this group for a number of years now, 2 or 3 years, and so they're really quite aware of this. And so, so go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted to give that background for this particular group there.
Thank you for that. That's an excellent background, and that's one example there of a very dramatic and large infusion of energy into our modest effort, which is growing, which is very welcome. And I'm sure from the ET's point of view, when they see a great influx of human beings who are people of goodwill and genuinely seeking contact, this must make them very happy as well. So we're very indebted to that particular group, to MISA, for joining us at those times yearly. And so from the large scale, I also get stories on a very intimate level and everything in between from our various members. I'd like to share one of those stories, a very intimate one by one of our members who wrote this in his own words. So I will present that and let you know what it was that he experienced recently. He wrote, "I have a pretty routine experience that happens nearly every time I go out, which is once or twice a week. Tonight was a little different because I did more experimentation. Normally 2 types of signals come on my magnetometer, all of which are recorded on a voice recorder on my iPhone. One is a strong 6-beat signal that sharply maxes out the magnetometer with each beat. This I associate intuitively with 2 small gray-like beings on my assigned team. After a few of these sequences, there is often an exuberant, fast-paced lyrical burst which is almost symphonic in quality. This I associate with the supervisor of my assigned team, who I met in a vision in Crestone last spring and named him Lar. He is very tall, and I've had a few visions of his planet, his craft, and what his mind state is as he does his ambassadorial work." And he finishes by saying, "Tonight the signals came the very instant I turned on the magnetometer and iPhone recorder. I decided to try something we've done during the last few trainings. I moved the magnetometer around at various locations around and above and below me with my iPhone held next to the magnetometer. I found that the 6-beat signals were about 3 and sometimes 4 feet tall and in a space about 6 feet long to my right and another similar space to my left. They were not present directly in front of me. However, in front were the Lar-like exuberant signals which stretched as high as my arms could go, and I was standing on a half-foot platform, so the ET was perhaps 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
Right.
Along with the Lar-like signals were smooth-sounding beats of 8 interspersed. After measuring that, I went back to sitting with the magnetometer and iPhone to my right on the table, and the 6-beat signals came back strong, interspersed with the Lar lyrics. All in all, I came away awestruck. Their presence is very personal, intimate, and immediate." So you had mentioned, Steve, that various modalities are used, and this particular story just underlies one example of using the iPhone, and the app that you had created for contact turns your iPhone into a magnetometer. So this particular member of ours was using that piece of technology to make this incredible sensing contact where he could actually tell where the beings were by the response. And I know you've done some of that at your trainings too.
Well, we have it happen every time now. And what's interesting about this, to give some background, because that's a story that requires a lot of explanation. When there's a craft or a being that is in the area that's not fully in the 3D but is present, there are electromagnetic signals that will come in through various electronics we have on site. One is a thing called a magnetometer, and it actually picks up the magnetic field flux, the change in the magnetic field around you. Now, what's interesting, and this is something that I know who wrote that account, and he's a fellow physician, actually a medical doctor, and a very conscious and wonderful man. And he and I have done this where we've gone around to every piece of equipment with our magnetometers. And by the way, he wasn't using, we have magnetometers separate from how your iPhone can be made into one. And there will be no signal coming from anything unless you hold it within 2 inches of, say, a camcorder or something that has a motor running. And it will be completely 100% silent. But as soon as we have contact, and often we'll see an object in the sky, we'll see something in the field around us, we have videotape of these things that blip in very quickly, then these electronic detectors, some of them are like radar detectors and laser detectors, but there are also these magnetometers, which are magnetic field meter devices. They will actually not just go off because there's a being present or a craft nearby. They'll go off in a sequence, like he's discussing, that's actually conversational, which they do not make if you pick them up and took one of these devices and put it next to a refrigerator or next to a cell phone or anything like that. It will not make these sounds because we've done this. We've done it over and over and over again, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. So what you find is that these extraterrestrial civilizations don't always appear in 3D. They may be there in 3D, but you can't see them. Maybe they're, I hate to use the word cloaked, but they're phase shifted out of phase so that, it's you're seeing some sort of effect from them. You may see some subtle energy. You may see an orb float through the circle. Now, but these detectors will actually lock on, and they will come within the circuitry and actually begin doing this coded messaging that can go on for as much as an hour or two. And it's really fascinating to see this happen. And people who have these sorts of devices will say, I can go anywhere and have it with me in my car all the time. It never does this, but when we're doing this contact, it makes this sort of electronic transdimensional signaling. It's really quite exciting to experiment with, and it's important to understand this because it doesn't have to be like a Steven Spielberg movie where there's a ship that materializes fully. We have found that they will materialize fully at times. Other times, it may not be safe for them to do so because there are military programs that are targeting these objects, and to my knowledge, they've shut down over the years dozens of them using electromagnetic type weapon systems. So we always do this and ask the ETs to manifest in whatever way is safe and appropriate for this time and place, knowing that, unfortunately, right now the Earth is an armed camp run by, put it politely, crypto-fascists, secret fascist-oriented people who want to keep all this secret. But that doesn't mean that the ETs can't make very intimate, overt, demonstrable contact, but it may not be the way everyone's expecting. And this is the key thing to understand. They don't have to comply to our expectations. We have to understand how a faster than the speed of light, transdimensional interstellar civilization might appear. And it's in a whole lot of different ways, both in consciousness and thought, and very mysterious tones, but also through these sort of unusual electromagnetic phenomena, which has been happening in a rapidly escalating rate in the last couple of years. And I think that that's just a great account. He was referring to the Crestone event of last summer, and just so that people know, we're going to be in Crestone again this June for those who want to come. It's up in the high desert of Colorado. It's a beautiful setting. It's in an 8,000-foot valley, and I own some land there that's right at the base of the mountains where the sacred Tibetan stupa is that the Dalai Lama asked a friend of mine, Ambassador Jim George of Canada, to build. And we are going to be there for a whole week this coming June from the basically from the 17th until the 23rd. And it's just a wonderful place to go. And the kinds of things that happen are mind-blowing in this area as well. And one of the things that happened when we were there, around the time that he was having this first experience with us out in Crestone, the man who wrote that, was that there was a light ship that literally lifted up right in front of us and went up in front of the mountains and into the sky, and we have a photograph of that is really absolutely mind-blowing. So we're working on putting a lot of this together in a video and a film to come out this year, but it's when you see it, you go, wow. And the other thing that happened is that on that same site where we're going to be this June, there's a tree there where we put the ashes of my very good friend Sherry Adamak, who was killed trying to help me do disclosure back in the late 90s. And it's a cedar. It's a very round, perfectly shaped cedar tree. And so we scattered her ashes there. And then we were there making contact, and suddenly I saw this golden light that was like the shape of a disc that just blipped in and blipped out. And I turned to Emery, who does a lot of photography for us, and I said, Emery, there's an object over here that just phased in and phased out very quickly. So he takes a camera and takes a picture, and in the picture you can see right on the ground, at ground level, this golden, it's like liquid gold craft that is sitting right at the level of the desert. It's actually quite beautiful. And that's when this gentleman who wrote this account that you're sharing had this experience where we went into deep meditation, and he had this profound breakthrough where he was introduced to this senior extraterrestrial ambassador from another star system called Lore. It's actually pronounced Lore. And it really amazing experience, and that has continued ever since, where he has had this ongoing contact with this ET being, not only in terms of images of this being, but also these electromagnetic phenomena, and then occasionally seeing an object that will come nearby. So I think it's really quite interesting the way the ETs are interacting with our group. It can sometimes be rather enigmatic to some people and not at all what they're thinking because people look at too many science fiction films. But the reality of it is actually more beautiful and intimate and stunning when these events begin to unfold like the one you just shared. So, yeah. By the way, the Romanian, one of the things that you didn't share, and I was talking to this woman who's sort of very high up with this group in Romania that does a lot of it has over 8,000 people that come for this event. She told me that when they did that, when you guys were doing the World CE5 initiative, they actually had an object that came in and flew over this massive crowd of people right through the group that kind of like came in and out of space-time, sort of manifesting and dematerializing and materializing as it came through. And she said it was an astonishing thing to see. And it was an amazing contact event that was mass witness that came right over their gathering while they were doing these protocols in consciousness.
That is amazing, and you just know that someone was listening and watching when something like that happens. You can't make that up.
Oh yeah, well, Ileana, who is the person I'm speaking of, you should get her account for you because it's a wonderful account. You know, I hear so many of these, but what you realize is that when a large number of people are in this state of consciousness and they're doing it with a pure heart, these extraterrestrial civilizations are very enlightened. I always point out to people, look, if all the stuff you see in the movies were true, we'd be toast because we've acted like such, frankly, jackasses for the last 50 years. But they're very patient, they're very kind, and they manifest in such extraordinary ways. And they're completely nonviolent. And they show enormous restraint in the face of really quite a horrific military response to them that's gone between just lies and denial and shooting at them with very advanced electromagnetic weapons. But I think that when a group of people breaks out of the normal human response to this, which is either fear, denial, consternation, or what have you, they're very eager. This is what I found is beautiful. They're actually, they don't care if you're a housewife or a doctor or a mechanic or a sanitation worker or a policeman or a fireman, and we've had people from all those categories on these events. They care if you're awake and you're sincere and you're doing this with a pure heart and you want to see this world join the family of interstellar civilizations and enlightenment going into this whole new era that we're moving into. And I always tell people that the reason this is so key is that we're opening this 500,000-year cycle right now and closing out this old yuga, this old period. And this new cycle of 500,000 years isn't just an Earth cycle. It's not just a Mayan cycle. It's not just a human event. It is a universal cycle. It's the confluence of cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles. And so there's this coming together that's this great gathering. And over the next decades and hundreds of years, humanity is going to become integrated into this cosmic network of advanced civilizations. Of course, the entry ticket to that is that we behave with a modicum of civility, which means at least we stop murdering each other in warfare. But we're not there yet, obviously, if you see what's going on in the world today. But that's where we have to be moving, and this is the more people who understand that and actually walk that walk and go out and become ambassadors, the more it potentiates that good future, the more it manifests that good future through us. And that's why doing these large group events is so important. So what are some of the other ones that you have there? I know you have a number.
Well, some of this, what you've been talking about is very enlightening and very serious kind of business. You're right. It's about finding peaceful people on this planet to help solve our own problems and then to become part of the universal peace process where we join other planets, and this is all very serious and profound work.
Right.
At the same time, though, judging by, I'll have a couple stories here, we see a lot of, I almost want to say whimsical or lighthearted type of communication, too, that can balance some of the more, serious aspects of this. For example, one member wrote us, yesterday evening we witnessed something spectacular. After meditation and vectoring, we saw one ship approaching from the west and two from the north. They were heading towards each other like on a collision course. We signaled to them, and by this he means with a laser, which we use as part of our work. We signaled to them, and all three flashed back.
Right.
After that, they converged and formed a perfect triangle for about 5 to 8 seconds before continuing their course. And another similar kind of story was written by someone. By the way, the one I would just mention was from the island of Aruba.
Oh, and what's important about that, by the way, is that the equilateral triangle is if you go to cseti.org, you'll see this logo that's an equilateral triangle. And the mantra that we use actually makes a triangular form in deep consciousness that becomes a tetrahedron and then can merge into becoming a double tetrahedron in a Merkaba. And it's very interesting. And the logo for cseti.org became that after we went up on this hill in England back 20 years ago in 1992, and Colin Andrews had told me where the epicenter of all these crop circles. So we went up there and we visualized this equilateral triangle and sent it mentally to the ETs. And that morning, in a field not far from where we were, that logo form was found in a crop that was the best crop circle of that year in terms of the science behind it, for it being a legitimate, not hoaxed one, et cetera, and so on. And it was as if they had lifted it from our minds and put it in this field of wheat. And it's actually quite beautiful. The story of that is also on the CSETI site. So it's interesting that they would make then this same triangular form in the sky.
Well, there was 1 month early on as we were forming the teams. It wasn't in October when we started, but maybe several months later, when I asked our teams to specifically in their meditations as we were linking up to ask for demonstrations of this CSETI triangle that you were just talking about, Steve.
Right.
See how many different ways the ETs might choose to communicate with us. And though I don't have some of the stories here, I have to say that during that month, I got numerous examples of not only like this one that I just related to you from Aruba, but other ways that the triangle from the CSETI symbol showed up. Some of it, very terrestrial in certain ways, some of it, like this previous example, up in the sky. And as a matter of fact, myself, in the Sierra foothills with my team, towards the end of the night, I happened to look up and I saw 3 of them near the horizon in a perfect equilateral triangle, just skimming the edge of the mountains in the distance, slowly and very deliberately, so that I could not mistake it or talk myself out of it being anything than it was. It was a triangle. So that was just really heartening to know that, they can lift us, they can hear us, and that they will respond when it's safe and when it's proper and
right.
Made.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, there's some others that stick out that you'd like to share.
Yeah, here's one that's a combination of sky and something more personal, which is interesting. One member wrote, I believe this was from Tennessee, I had a most interesting experience last Saturday night. I parked my car after coming home. I looked up, and suddenly I saw 11, count them, 11 amber-colored UFOs undulating very calmly in the sky.
Right.
I was stunned and mesmerized. I was able to view them for about 5 minutes, and then they just all disappeared. What could I say? What could I do? I went up into my apartment, checked my voicemail. I saw I had one call and carefully listened. It was a chirping sound. What was that? Then I flashed on having read some of the ambassador training experiences of folks who had astrally sensed the ET presence, hearing what they called a chirping sound. The ET has typed at my phone over the last few years, calling up but leaving no message, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day, chirping. From what I can dimly gather, this must be one way that ETs are phoning home.
Or phoning us, at least. Yeah, right.
Phoning us, yeah. Yeah, and
well, we've had a number of people have unbelievable things happen. Of course, you've heard the story of Marilyn's experience in New York, where they were so insistent they kept putting music and E.T. writing on her cell phone, and until she would come to one of these expeditions, which she did a couple of years ago, and it was insistent. And the ETs very much understand how to interface with these electronics, with consciousness, and of course they can fully materialize. One of the things I want to share is that a little over a week ago we were up in on the edge of Tonto National Forest in Arizona, and this was an advanced expedition for people who had already been on one of these week-long training events. And we were in this meditation, and we had done the puja in the center of our circle. And we were right at the point where we were in the meditation where, and I was speaking sort of what I was experiencing, where there was quite clearly a number of ET craft that were around us, but they were shifted on different frequencies beyond the speed of light, beyond linear space-time, but around us proximally, and we had some electromagnetic, amazing things happening. At the point in the meditation where I was speaking about human civilization becoming this God consciousness, enlightened civilization, traveling amongst the stars as a people with these other civilizations, as the words God consciousness left my lips, I'm not kidding, there are 23 witnesses to this. At that moment, the sky opened up. It was like the heavens were rent asunder, and kind of behind me and above came an object that came in and fully materialized, and it was massive, and it put a blue light into our circle. It didn't light up the whole area, onto our immediate area, and it was so bright that even people who had their eyes closed saw it like the sun had come up and was shining in their eyes. It was that brilliant, and it was amazing, but it was like it was on cue with that expression of enlightenment of humanity traveling amongst the cosmos with these other civilizations into the future. It was really beautiful, and everyone felt that it wasn't light, it was some kind of a conscious energy that was sent through everyone, where everyone felt like from their crown chakras all the way through their bodies and into the earth, into humanity, was this amazing energy that was being transmitted. And this was something that everyone saw. I mean, there was nothing subtle about it. And what everyone realized was that how much in tune they are to the concept of our future. And the potential within humanity, because we dwell a lot on all the problems on this planet, but there's also this enormous and beautiful potential that we have of great kindness and great enlightenment and invention and peace, and that this is exactly what we have to aspire to is our higher aspect, and if we do, we'll be that.
It's wonderful, as you talked there, Steve, about how a whole group of people can simultaneously have an experience like that. Having been on trainings with you, it's not uncommon sometimes in these groups for a small group of people to witness something, and then by the time others turn their heads or reorient themselves, the phenomenon has vanished.
Right.
And so not everybody always sees the same thing at the same time. And that also makes for a richer experience, too. But there are times when a whole group can kind of just be brought right into their heart simultaneously. That happened with one of our teams where 14 people simultaneously witnessed an object in the constellation Orion.
Right.
Laser signals were put there, which hung around for about 10 minutes and would just slightly change positions, but it would be there pulsing on and off and then disappear and then on and off, just long enough, 10 minutes, so that every single member of that group could be sure that they had all shared the same experience. And that's the kind of thing where you just walk away feeling uplifted, because you know that you've been so very consciously touched and communicated with, and there's no mistaking that kind of a communication as being some kind of natural weather phenomenon or something man-made.
Right. Yeah, no, these sort of things are unmistakable, and they have an energy about them that's actually stunning and very beautiful. So, well, there's some others that you have. Do you have any others you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, another member was using a laser, and these lasers are actually wonderful. I mean, often what we'll do is draw the CSETI triangle in the sky as we get out into the field and get ourselves situated as a kind of like a greeting, something that that we learned from you to do, and then during different times of our sky watch, we will repeat that in different parts of the sky, drawing this triangle. So one member wrote to me and talked about his use of the laser, and he's from Belgium. He wrote that, quote, "I made a line in the cloudless sky from my apartment window, from which I only see a small part of the sky. Seconds later, a big shooting star showed up, imitating my line, same direction, same length. I thought, what an amazing coincidence. The next day, I went out into the field, made a line in the cloudless sky again, and seconds later, in the same direction, same length, a shooting star. I said to myself, wow. I was still thinking that this could be a coincidence and was considering to ask the ETs to give me another shooting star to reduce my doubt. Then I thought to myself, hey, those ETs are not here to perform a private light show for me. And at that exact moment, wham, another shooting star at exactly the same spot, same length, direction, but with a different color, this one more reddish." So you can see kind of the whimsy there, where in our egos we don't want to believe that this is kind of like a SeaWorld type of show where they're just there to perform. But on the other hand, it seems to me that this particular member was just very genuine and sincere about this and had genuine doubts. And to that, the ETs responded in a very respectful and almost playful fashion.
Right, they are very playful. You're right, and we actually had this happen when we were in Arizona here recently, where a couple weeks ago, and we were doing our protocol, and suddenly everyone on this part of the circle where I was sitting heard like human footsteps behind us. But you look back, there'd be nothing there. And then suddenly it moved around, and there was this like unbelievable cry, like a voice that called out in the night from maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 yards from us. And it was no animal. It was no human. It was very unusual, almost atavistic. And everyone really thought it, in a way it was very funny because, you know, how sometimes I'll go out and I'll hoop and I'll holler. And it was almost like it was doing that back, but it was very, very close, this being. And we had just been talking about how we had sensed that there were a group of beings that were right there that we could see near the puja table, and they weren't quite fully materialized. And then in the meditation, we heard them, and then people actually were touched. They could feel beings touch them on their shoulders. And then this event happened where I think we got it recorded because it was a loud cry of some kind of a humanoid being that was in this dimension enough to be quite clear. And but it was very playful. It was almost as if they were wanting us to continue to do that with them. And so, you know, there's an almost infinite variety of ways that these extraterrestrial civilizations will send ambassadors and emissaries to us and do these sort of things that seem quite bizarre and sometimes very funny. But when they happen, you go, wow, you know, they're really quite interested in what we're doing. And the other thing that was quite clear is that a lot of times when we're doing this is that they're wanting to do things. If you don't get it the first time, they'll repeat it. Like this man you just said had this happen in the same exact area over and over. And we've had that happen where we've had an object appear and not everyone got it, and then it'll just reappear. Like it'll totally materialize there, and go the opposite direction or something, just so to be sure that people acknowledge it. And years ago, when I first brought this up to some people in Mexico, on Jaime Musson, who does a show 60 Minutes down there, and has collected a lot of accounts of sightings around the volcanoes and what have you. He says a number of times that's happened where there's a lock-on between the person and consciousness and a craft, and it'll go into a cloud and then out of a cloud and then back out of the cloud, and like playing a peekaboo. It's really quite funny. We have videotape of this, actually, and where they're actually sort of playing, and it's sort of a playful nature to it, but it's also a way that they're teaching people that we really are locked on, even though you may not understand how. And that's why when I was explaining to Jaime Musson, well, the how has to do with understanding the nature of reality, the nature of the universe as a conscious quantum hologram, and that our consciousness and thought and the consciousness of the great being, the cosmic mind, are one, and that if you are in a state and acknowledge that, then the whole universe is awake. You're not looking at empty sky. You're looking at mind, and everything is awake. Every photon, all the stars are conscious. Every planet is conscious. And back when I first started CSETI, I had an experience where I was taken out into space and looked back at the Earth, and I had this experience where I realized that Earth herself is a conscious living being, and she began to communicate with me, not as a human, but was awake. And it was like this, it sounded like, come on. But then I realized as I turned my awareness in this state, I was in sort of this really amazing state of unity, awareness, consciousness. As I put my awareness on each planet, each one had its own personality, had its own gender, and had its own tone, and that within each heavenly body was a signal or a musical tone. And then at one point they all blended into one and became this one pure, complex, but pure tone of the cosmos. And with that I sort of transcended into a samadhi state. But I was actually out in our solar system when this happened. I had a contact experience when this happened. And it was one of the things that caused me to go ahead and form CSETI and then do the Disclosure Project, because I really felt that this is such wonderful information, and the experiences are so wonderful, and they're so accessible to everyone. Because when I first started having these experiences, I was a poor college kid, and I was 18 years old. And I thought, wow, everyone can do this. And it's not something that is, you don't need a $5 billion NASA budget. In fact, it's probably counterproductive. We don't have it anyway. And so what I tell people is that luckily with some very modest tools and your own conscious mind and learning a few protocols for meditation and remote viewing and this coherent thought sequencing and all that, you can do this. And the ETs are so eager to do it, I think, because they're not getting a response that's appropriate from the UN or the State Department or from, the Secretary of State or the President or whoever. They're expecting us to, we, the people, and that's we the people, not of just the United States, but of the planet. And so this is, to me, the real kind of global awakening in springtime that's going to be happening increasingly, which we're working on this year to have a really amazing movie come out about all this. There's an Emmy Award-winning director and producer that we're talking with, and because we really think it's time for people to understand that not only disclosure and bringing out these technologies, but contact is going to be at a very personal and local level. That this sort of bureaucracy that we sort of somehow in our mind, in this authoritarian thing, that somehow it's going to be NASA, or it's going to be some officials at the UN, or it's going to be the Secretary of State or something. I said, not likely. The ETs know that, the truth is that the people who understand consciousness and understand the science of awareness and consciousness are much more likely to be able to understand how to make contact and what to do when contact happens than someone who happens to have risen up through the political system as it exists today on this planet. And it doesn't mean that we don't have compassion for them, and I spend a lot of time briefing these sorts of folks in Congress and in D.C. and other capitals, but we have to view this as something where the primary force on this planet are the people, not some bureaucracy. And that's why when more people do this, the ETs respond, because they're very eager to see a large number of people getting this and practicing this.
mentioning that this is the work of the people is right in line with the goals of the groups and the teams that we do have. We realized at the beginning that this was a people's disclosure movement, precisely because of what you were just talking about, Steve, where governments those that have come forward kicking and screaming to reveal what they know on websites sometimes, whereas others haven't.
Right.
So it's been left, like so many other things, up to we the people to take it upon ourselves, organize, and do our own disclosure. And because you've provided all the materials necessary, the price of entry is very low for this.
Right.
You buy a little bit of technology, you get the book, maybe you can get the app to put on your iPhone, and then you just go out and do it. You find the right spot, hopefully a small team of people who are like-minded, and you start experimenting, and it's really not very long until you start getting results of one kind or another.
Right, and by the way, anybody listening out there who knows how to get the iPhone app turned into something that would work on an Android, get hold of us. Send us an email to disclosureproject.org. We'd love to be able to do that. We just the person who knew how to do these apps only knew the programming for the iPhones and iPads. But if there's someone out there who knows how to do that, I mean, again, we pretty much put out what we have volunteers and people to do. So if anyone has that skill set, let us know. I'd certainly way past my pay grade. You don't want to get me too near a computer. I just break them. But I'm 10 thumbs. But at any rate, that would be great if someone who knew how to do that can convert the iPhone app to something that would work on all the other smartphones. But the other thing I want to point out to people is that we have a YouTube channel, and it's the CSETI YouTube channel, and if you want to go to that, you can also see that we have a lot of the top secret witness testimony up there, and we're going to start putting, beginning in a week or two, about half an hour every week of new material. Some will be some that is in some of the DVDs that we've had on the Disclosure Project site for sale. But we're going to go through 35 hours of all these top secret testimonies and start putting them up there, as well as a lot of the other video and material we have. And we're going to be doing something new every week up on this YouTube channel on CSETI. So we've just gotten someone who knows how to do that and is going to begin doing this for us fairly soon. So we're going to be doing a lot of things that we hadn't done. The other thing is if you want to sign up at disclosureproject.org or cseti.org, either way, to our website, you can subscribe for free. And what we'll do is that we will notify you when we have a new interview up with one of these top secret military witnesses, and also other upcoming events. And I'm going to start a blog fairly soon that I every week will be commenting and bringing out new information and perspective on. So if you want to see that, you can sign up also for free on our site and get all the information you can. So I just wanted to mention these things because a lot of people say, gosh, how can I get more information? And this is how you can do it. And this year we're going to try to put everything we can out to the public. And then we hope by the end of the year or within a year or so we'll have a totally new film that will be out that will have amazing amounts of information and things that people have never seen before, and the whole story. And it's going to contain not just all the disclosure information, it's going to contain the contact experiences we've had, the best of the images and film footage and photographs, and also a great deal of information on the free energy and new energy systems that we need to come together as a people and bring out. So anyway, those are things that we're planning this year. And again, if you'd like to join us for our expeditions, we do have the one coming up in Florida in next month in April, and that one you can find out about at cseti.org. And we also have one coming up in June that will be in Crestone, which is just a fantastic experience, and that one is the 18th to the 24th of June. And then we'll also be up at Mount Shasta, California, kind of your neck of the woods, Kosta, but we're going to be up on the mountain. And there's this massive lodge that we've found that's surrounded by thousands of acres of national forest that has this unbelievable view of Shasta. And we're going to be there from August 12th to the 18th this year. So it'll be pretty warm, won't be too cold at night, which will be nice. And then in November 11th through the 17th is what is tentatively planned. We're going to be out in the desert, Southwest in the desert again. So we have these events coming up, and if you want to join us on these, you can find out more at csei.org. So, well, Kosta, thank you for being with us today and sharing these experiences from folks around the world. And I want to thank you for doing that, because I think it's such an important thing to help coordinate people into this kind of esprit de corps, and I certainly haven't had time to do it, and it was something we needed to do, and I'm glad and grateful that you stepped up to the plate to do it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been a joy, and the response has been tremendous from people and the enthusiasm. So it's got its own momentum now, and we just hope that it continues to grow.
Right, it will, and we're going to keep looking up. All right, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every 2 weeks, and you've been listening to Conversations with Dr. Greer, and I'm Dr. Stephen Greer of CSETI and DisclosureProject.org, and hope to see you soon under the stars. God bless you, and keep looking up. Bye-bye.